Felly, gai gyflwyno yn ei tro Ellie Harwood o'r Child Poverty Action Group, sydd wedi gwneud gwaith hynod o bwysig, a fel fyddwn ni'n clywed y bore yma, ynglyn â chost diwrnod yr ysgol, a'r rhwystrau yna sy'n rhwystro plant a dysgwyr o gefndiroedd llai breintiedig i gael mynediad at y gyfleoedd addysg. Nicola Fitzpatrick wedyn o'r National Education Union Cymru, a wedyn Gareth Lloyd o UCU Cymru. Ac wrth gwrs, Kevin Campbell, aelod seneddol yn y grŵp yn y Senedd, wrth gwrs, a hefyd yn llefarydd Plaid Cymru dros addysg, a Sioned Williams ydw i, a dwi'n llefarydd Plaid Cymru dros gyfiawnder cymdeithasol a'r blynyddoedd cynnar. Felly, rhyngddo ni, dwi'n meddwl bod ni yn mynd i gael trafodaeth eang. Beth o'n ni'n mynd i wneud i ddechrau? We're going to start with the expert speakers in their turn, as I said, perhaps to set out some of the broad themes that we need to think about in this discussion. So I'm going to turn firstly to Ellie, and perhaps you can set the scene for the revolution that needs to happen. Ellie, what do we need to see, and tell us perhaps why we need to see one.
Okay. Diolch yn fawr, Sioned and Kevin. Thank you so much for inviting us here to talk. I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to talk to everyone here about what is probably the biggest barrier to achieving our aspirations in terms of education in Wales, and that is child poverty. So we know that at this moment in time, around 9 children in a class of 30 are living in poverty in Wales. And over half of Welsh children will have some time in poverty during their childhood. So this isn't an issue that affects a small few, it is more than half of learners. Around 200,000 children currently living below the poverty line, and schools are expected to do their very best to educate these children, not only to help them progress their learning, but also increasingly to meet their needs for food, for clothing, for hygiene. So we work closely with the teaching unions, and we've surveyed their members, and 88% of NEU Cymru members are telling us that they've seen child poverty getting worse in schools, and then the signs are around material deprivation. So it is children who don't have the equipment, they don't have the resources that they need to learn, families who can't afford to pay for meals and trips, and children who are unable to do homework and study outside of school because they don't have the computers at home, or they don't have proper broadband, you know, and ultimately, when you speak to young people themselves, this is the issue that they care about the most as well. So we have a Youth Voice Champion programme where we're working in secondary schools around Wales, asking them what they want to change in the world, you know, and they have, you know, big priorities around mental and emotional health and climate change, but tackling poverty is the #1 issue that young people are asking us to kind of raise awareness of, and to ask adults, people in power, to really take action on. And the thing is, child poverty isn't just a problem of deprived areas, so you can often get into a kind of false sense that this is something that happens in poor communities. We have a lot of language around deprivation and so on, but child poverty exists in every part of Wales. It's in our inner cities, it's in our small towns, it's in the market towns of Carmarthenshire, it's in the rural wilds, you know, it's everywhere. Unfortunately, every single local authority, every single ward have families experiencing poverty. And one of the problems that Wales has is that over the last few years, poverty has become more persistent. So Wales now has the highest rate of children who remain in poverty for year after year. And this is because the routes out of poverty, those pathways, are increasingly being closed off and are becoming more difficult for families to access. And I'm really afraid to say that due to the poverty-producing policies that are coming from Westminster, child poverty is going to get worse in Wales. We expect to see it increase by the end of this decade, and almost all of that increase is being driven by a policy called the 2-child limit, which restricts the amount of social security that families can receive to the first 2 children. But that policy harms all children, not just the child who's excluded, because parents don't just pick one child to deprive and meet the needs of the others. They unfortunately have to share that pain, and they take an awful lot on themselves as well. But I think, you know, schools are playing such a crucial role. We have to have hope here. We have to recognise that in Wales we have a fantastic, dedicated education workforce. Teachers, school leaders, but also all the staff who work in schools, the family engagement officers, the school catering staff, everyone who supports children with additional learning needs. They make a huge difference every single day, and education can be a vehicle for social justice, and I think it helps at this point to look north to our friends in Scotland, look at some of the things that have been brought in by the government there, not only things like the Scottish Child Payment, which gives families enough money to be able to support their children's education with the resources they need. They've got obviously support with meals and uniform, which we have in Wales as well, but could be more generous and should be more generous. But also they see their education system as a fundamental tool for tackling child poverty. They run tackling child poverty through every single policy area of government. It's the First Minister's personal priority, and everything they do in government, regardless of how far removed it might seem from children, it is absolutely at the heart of what that government does. We want schools to be well-resourced so they can support children to learn and thrive and fulfil their potential. And at the moment, we've got under-resourced settings doing their very best to support children from under-resourced homes. And it leads then, unfortunately, to more children than we would like not reaching their full potential, not being able to make those pathways into higher, further education. And people talk about poverty of aspiration. They will say, that we've got a problem in Wales with poverty of aspiration amongst children and their families. And I would really strongly refute that very, very much. I think the only poverty of aspiration we have is from the state and from the government in terms of what they think children should be doing. When parents are surveyed, National Survey for Wales, 80% of parents and carers said at the age of 16 they wanted their child to continue on in full-time education. Further 10% said they wanted them to go into work-based learning or apprenticeships. 6% said they'd like their child to have choice between the two. So you can see that there's really, really high levels of expectation from families and the children themselves. But we don't necessarily at the moment have in place a system that is giving people the resources they need, both the learners themselves and the people who are supporting their learning, to enable them to make that progression. And I know we're going to now talk about what that looks like in the classroom, and then also further on in terms of colleges and universities as well.
Diolch, Ellie. Could I just ask you, you mentioned there some of the things that Scotland are doing. What are the things that you think that Wales isn't doing? We mentioned those welfare cuts, unfortunately, over which we have no control, and we're not standing up to them. The Welsh Government isn't standing up to them, we are. But what are the specific things you think could really help that? Just that basic level of poverty, just briefly, some of the things that you'd like to see change.
By far the biggest and most ambitious policy is the Scottish Child Payment. So that's direct payments that top up the amount of universal credit that families with children can receive. It's an absolute game changer, reducing child poverty eventually by 16 percentage points. So Scotland already has a much lower child poverty rate than Wales, but it is, it is absolutely transformative, and it is transforming the lives of children. The policy is so new that we can't yet see kind of official statistics that are reflecting the reduction, but it will be coming soon. And on top of that, they've made a commitment to offset the two-child limit. So, this is another, again, policy that's targeted at those families at highest risk of poverty and the deepest poverty. Particularly, the policy affects children in minoritized ethnic group families, and so, it's very much a social justice policy in that respect. There are other things that Scotland do as well, though, as I say. It's also about having a mindset that says this is something that matters in every policy area, seeing education as a vehicle for social justice, I think, and really committing, in terms of cost of the school day, there's actually an expectation that every local authority has a strategy, that every school takes part in it, but the Scottish Government resource that, so they actually directly employ people who can support councils and schools with developing those policies, and good practice sharing, bringing together experts, and particularly listening to parents, carers and children themselves. So I think those are some of the things that would make a real difference.
To move now to Nghymru, and you're going to talk to us perhaps about more, of course you represent the and can you perhaps outline some of the problems they are seeing, some of the challenges they're seeing, and perhaps some of the solutions and measures that can be put in place to support, obviously, those teachers and then, of course, those learners?
Diolch, Rhoned. Yes, certainly. So I'm briefly going to talk about the start of the journey, really, and it follows on quite a lot from what you just said, Ellie. So getting this right, really, doesn't start with attendance problems or exam reform or curriculum reform, even though I am going to touch on that a little bit. It starts with understanding and valuing early years education, and it's critical that we get the start of the journey right, really. And, high quality early years education enables children to learn and thrive, as we know. And what our members are telling us is that practitioners, policymakers, leaders must truly understand play and its core place in the lives of the youngest children, right through, actually, to that essential social time that is often stripped away from the school day as young people move into secondary. So what lots of our members are telling us is they don't... pupils don't have that time, social time, to meet with each other at lunch times and break times, which is really essential to their mental health and their social well-being. So high quality early years education contributes, we feel strongly, to social equity, but critically it supports those who need it most from the earliest opportunities, basically. And our members are telling us, and NEU Nghymru feel really strongly, that for far too long, the educational importance of early years has been neglected. So many families who've got children with additional learning needs are struggling to access early education. And we know that access to early years, nursery schools, reception classes with qualified teachers in place, for example, is patchy. The provision is patchy across Wales. So, that, from our point of view, is something that we need to look at. And some of the issues that our members tell us a lot about are school attendance figures. And again, many of the reasons why attendance is an issue link back to what Ellie was saying. You covered them very eloquently. I'm not going to repeat them. But school attendance figures are our starting point, really, because they lay bare a school system that's not working properly for all children and young people in Wales. And so, for example, the last academic year, nearly a third of pupils were persistently absent. So that's 31.9% of pupils have met the persistent absence threshold of 10% of sessions missed. And there are a variety of reasons for that we haven't got time to go into, but I think probably worryingly, the attendance rates declined steeply for year 11. So that's quite worrying here. So, reforming qualifications presented a real chance to capture skills and abilities of young people in an equitable way outside of high stakes exams. So, we're really proud that there's a system in Wales of non-exam assessments. However, what our members are telling us is the in-class timed assessments still look and feel like exams to young people. So it is continuing to create stress, and we know our members are telling us it's a huge creator of workload for them, so it has a negative impact rather than a positive. And I think, just to follow on from that, the VCSEs, the new vocational GCSEs, there's an opportunity that, they must be funded so they don't feel secondary. And the high quality professional learning for teachers is critical here. So they know how to teach the content effectively, and we are genuinely supporting all children and young people and celebrating those opportunities. I think the next thing that I'd like to say really is about children with additional learning needs, and I think we've got a real chance here to grasp what we have and to change it so it works for all those who access it. And I think whatever age they access it, from whatever background they're from and whatever their learning need is. And NEU Nghymru certainly welcomes the opportunities like these to work collaboratively to discuss practical ways to remove those barriers. And I think to take it in a whole, there are lots of reasons why young people aren't accessing what's on offer currently in Wales in the best way that they can, and we need to have further conversations about what that looks like and the resolutions that we seek. But a really simple one is having the conversations is the starting point, not continuing to have conversations about them though, but to actually take some action. So the profession want things to be done with them and not to them, and I think that's really key. And rather than keep continually looking at new initiatives, what gets taken away, what do we have to stop doing, and what can we do better and more effectively? You know, we all want to champion and celebrate all young people and children and young people across Wales, and I think there's a better way to do that. And yeah, I think we need to seize the bull by the horns and get there. So yeah.
I mean, that attendance issue is something which is absolutely elemental, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because if those learners are not in school for whatever reasons, whatever those barriers are, then you know the journey stops there, doesn't it? And also we know that the intervention, the human cost and the cost to public services is going to increase exponentially, and those learners are not going to be able to avail themselves of the pathways that can take them beyond those barriers that have stopped them getting education in the first place. What would you like to see as regards specifically on attendance? We've had a lot of talk about attendance from Welsh Government. What do the workforce feel about what's currently being talked about?
Okay, so I think one of the things that I haven't said that I should say is, I think the attendance of children who have free school meals is lower, so we need to look at the connections there. I think we truly need to start to unpick and strip back what the issues are, what are the genuine barriers, and I think addressing public, you know, transport, how to get to settings, how to get to the right provision. I said earlier that early years provision is patchy across Wales. Is it a long way? Can I actually get there? Is it something as simple as the cost that the bus to get there? So I think, yeah, I think it's okay to have lots of statistics, and I try to avoid delivering those to give you the figures on attendance, but I think we actually have to sit down with practitioners. We have to look at what's happening in there, because obviously it's different across different settings and in different parts of Wales, and there'll be different reasons for that. But I think we have to talk, again, go back to NEU Nghymru members would like to be spoken to a lot more and have any solution developed with them, and not, like I said, do with them, not to them, which is really important.
There's that consistency of approaches there. We hear
Absolutely.
all the time, and we, you know, obviously I speak a lot on child poverty, and when we talk about transport, for instance, we know that it's so different from local authority to local authority. So a consistent approach, I think, is also key. And that has to come from Welsh Government, doesn't
Absolutely.
it? And funded. Gareth, I'm going to turn to you and the post-16 area. So challenges as regards participation. What opportunities can be created to overcome these challenges?
Okay, Diolch.
Thank you.
First of all, it's really interesting to be speaking with my colleagues from the Compulsory Education Union and wider in terms of when we're talking about child poverty, because that's my background as a teacher. My biggest frustration before we go anywhere is we don't get these opportunities. I go to meetings of post-compulsory education alongside government, alongside other people, alongside stakeholders, but they're constantly talking about schools, and some of the information is just not correct. And I have to correct it because I've come from that sector. So first of all, we need that open dialogue, because anything I'm about to talk about is short-term. The long-term solutions don't exist in my sector, they exist in your sector. And unless we have an open dialogue about that, I was very proud. I always used to say there's more teachers coming from Wales than anywhere else. That was my starting point. I was very proud of that. Dwi'n byw yn Llanelli and Rhyddol Merthyr, I always add that bit because I'm proud of where I'm from, I'm proud of the community where I taught, where I went to school. I'm proud that I went to school in the Gwynedd Estate. I'm proud that two of the principals in further education colleges both went to the same school, Penydre and Merthyr Tydfil. And I taught in a different school, Cyfarthfa, in Merthyr. I was told by my teachers, and I wasn't going to say this, but I was told by my teachers that going to university was a real way out of poverty, was but also a fantastic experience. Towards the end of my teaching career, we were more cautious about saying that. I'm going to start with a negative and work back, because I could talk about barriers all the time, and I don't want to talk about barriers for too long. I think they've been addressed, and we know what they are to an extent. First of all, 30% participation rate. Okay, we can look at London, 50% participation rate. But Northern Ireland's got 40% participation rate. We should be appalled by that figure. And I want to break it down a little bit more. We are well aware that fantastic work's been done between schools and colleges, and the numbers of learners in colleges is going up. And while those learners may be level 1 and 2, that's still a positive. And long term, that could have a real positive impact in higher education, but not in the short term. And why is that? And let's start at the basics. Parity of esteem. If you're taking a vocational route or an academic route, I can't stand that term academia, so I just don't like it. That idea that you're only academic if you take one route and you're okay. What does that mean? Because it should be both. Because you do academia, you eventually have to work in the workplace. So, you know, we've lost a lot of things there. We've lost work experience. We've lost the sandwich courses. They've gone. So there are perfect solutions to these problems as long as whatever course you take, you can end up in the same place. So alongside somebody who wants to take a vocational route, if I'm doing a history degree, they're in my halls of residence, they're next door to me. I'm going to stay in contact with them. They haven't done those traditional subjects, but they're still with me. We're sharing that experience, which is why I wanted to go away to university, to meet people from different... I'm speaking later on UNDEB and the trade unions are speaking about the far right, about how do we move people away from that. Well, education is the first start, isn't it? Good work. And I'll be talking about that later on, so I don't want to talk about too much about that now. But one thing about this opportunity we've got now, none of our unions in the education sector, for teachers, for lecturers, for university professors, all of these people, none of professional services, none of us are affiliated to any political party. That's unique. So this is a real opportunity to work with, we will work with anyone who can change education. And so far, I have to be upfront, we've had an open door. So I'm going to come up with some of the suggestions first of all. I'll start with my pet hate. Going to universities on open days and arriving there and seeing the cars in the car park. That would put me off straight away if I was a young person. I'd be saying, flipping heck, look at those cars. Where are the buses? I was talking to Nicola earlier about there are some areas, there are schemes that are being run in England. We shouldn't be looking to England for good schemes, but there are schemes in England where they're working, one called Shine, a project where they're encouraging more people to go away to university. Nicola was saying there are buses provided now to from some colleges to universities. Quick solutions. Every single open day for a Welsh university, and I know about aspirations, where people want to go, they want to go, but we can still work on bringing people back who've been away. There's very little work done on that. But a bus from every college, every sixth form, to Welsh universities' open days is an obvious thing to do, and it's not happening. My son's experience was Seren Project. Oxford talked to him, and he had one lecture from Bangor. Imagine having a lecture in history from Bangor or Wrexham or any of our universities, and every single school joining that online. It's such an obvious thing to do. The wastage in the education sector by private companies coming in and giving inset. I put in for one of the very first research projects. I'm really proud of this to this day. I used what was then SEN pupils would now be ALL pupils. They still talk to me about this 25 years later. They went down to teach primary school pupils how to use a computer, how to do PowerPoint. That's showing my age. It was new. But for the first time in their life, they could show somebody how to do something rather, and they taught the teachers, they taught everyone. That research grant, I could work with the universities, I could work with whoever I wanted to. Within 3 years, my head told me what I could use that for. Because of staff, because of shortages. So there's a couple of things we can do. One, we need to make sure the workforce is secure. We've seen what's happening in some of our universities and potentially in one of our colleges, compulsory redundancies. How can we ask students to come to a university when there's talk of compulsory redundancies, cutting courses, nursing courses, for instance? How can we possibly talk about wanting the best universities when we're talking about compulsory redundancies in a sector we haven't had redundancies of this nature before? If we get that right, and we have those colleges delivering those buses and sixth forms to the colleges, and from the schools to the colleges, and this is a key bit, and this doesn't cost a fortune, if we can employ people from the universities and the colleges to work in schools on a permanent basis. I was in a college last week. 3 students came up to talk to me and said, oh, do you work for UCU, that's the University College Union? Can you give me some advice on which Welsh universities to go to? That is provided, but it's not on a permanent basis. You can't go in a college or a sixth form on any given day or any lunch hour and go to talk about a Welsh university. If they're not seeing those Welsh universities in the colleges or Welsh colleges in schools, some of them are, right? There's brilliant work being done. We're working really closely with Chwyldroi Nghymru and Universities Wales and other groups as well. I want to be clear, and Medway, we're working really closely with them. but we need immediate action. We need those buses starting now, going to Welsh universities. We need somebody from the higher education, further education sector in the schools, or somebody they can talk to. We need collaboration. So there's a lot of talk. The Welsh Back is a good example of this. It counts in universities, the Welsh Back. They're teaching people how to research. I'm not convinced that academic courses teaches people how to research. I can base it on my son's experience doing history. Very little work. That was new to him, that type of research at that level. So I think we've got to be really, really careful how we do qualifications reform. But we have to have parity of esteem. And it is what we've said over and over again in UCU. It doesn't matter the path you take, you should be able to get to the same place. Very little of that is what I've got written down. It's a subject that's really passionate to me and I could talk forever on, but I'm not going to. But those quick solutions, guaranteed jobs, research, and allowing proper participation by taking those students physically to a place rather than relying on middle-class parents and their ability to be able to afford to go across the country for open days. That's the starting point. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr, and I'm sure some of the points you've got written down may come out in some of the discussion we have later. Wy'n mynd i droi ato chi nawr, Kevin, a falle gallwch chi yn amlwg ma'ch portfolio chi, chi'n llefarydd dros addysg a'r holl bethau yma yn bethau chi wedi bod yn ystyried o ran sut ych chi'n ymateb i weithredoedd y Llywodraeth a hefyd wrth feddwl am bolisiau Plaid Cymru yn y maes yma. Felly hoffech chi bigo lan ar rhai o'r pwyntiau sydd wedi cael eu codi yn bod.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Sioned, a diolch i'r panelwyr. Mae yna gymaint o bethau i ymateb iddyn nhw. Dwi jyst eisiau dechrau gyda blynyddoedd cynnar a tlodi plant. Mae rhaid i ni edrych ar beth mae'r Alban yn wneud yn dda iawn i bilwrio'n erbyn effeithiau mwy eithafol tlodi plant. Mae angen i ni ddatganoli y gyfundrefn lles i Gymru fel bod ni'n dyfeisio polisïau ein hunain fel mae'r Alban wedi llwyddo i wneud. Plaid Cymru sydd yn benna gyfrifol am sicrhau bod yna brydiau ysgol am ddim i bob plentyn cynradd yng Nghymru. Mae hwnna'n mynd i'r afel yn uniongyrchol a thaclo tlodi, ac ni'n hynod o falch fel plaid bod ni wedi gwthio am hynny fel rhan o'r cytundeb cydweithio rhwngddo ni a'r Llywodraeth. Ond wrth gwrs mae angen mynd ymhellach, mae angen ehangu gofal plant a ehangu blynyddoedd cynnar hefyd. A wi jyst eisiau ymateb i un pwynt nethoch chi ynglyn â tlodi. Mae yna dueddiad bod ni'n meddwl bod tlodi mewn ardaloedd trefol. Nes i gomisiynu gwaith blwyddyn yn ôl ar glodi gwledig, ac oedd e'n dangos yn glir bod yna lefelau uchel o glodi gwledig, ond mae e dan y wyneb, mae'n cael ei guddio. Felly mae rhaid i ni feddwl am glodi fel rhywbeth sydd ar draws Cymru gyfan. O ran ysgolion, a dau at y prifysgolion mewn eiliad, y pethau mae'r undebau ac athrawon dwi wedi siarad â nhw yn tynnu sylw ato yw absenoldeb, i ni wedi cyfeirio at hynny'n barod. Y cynnydd mewn niferoedd o blant sydd gyda ganghenion dysgu ychwanegol, a mae hynny wedi cynyddu yn arw iawn ers Covid. Cam ymddygiad mewn ysgolion hefyd ar gynnydd, a hefyd cynnydd mewn problemau iechyd meddwl. Nawr, mae hynny gyd gyda'i gilydd yn cyfrannu at ddarlun sydd yn un heriol iawn i athrawon. A mae'n iawn bod ni'n tynnu sylw at y heriau yma, ond mae e hefyd yn creu mewn ffordd rhyfedd iawn agwedd negyddol at y proffesiwn, sydd yn gwneud hi'n anodd wedyn i ni recriwtio athrawon a chadw athrawon yn y proffesiwn. Felly mae angen gweddnewid hynny i gyd. Felly un o'r syniadau sydd gan Blaid Cymru a rhywbeth dwi'n gweithio arno fer hyn o bryd yw sicrhau mewn ysgolion uwchradd bod y gwasanaethau cefnogol yna i ELN, i iechyd meddwl, i absenoldeb o ran cysylltu mwy gyda theuluoedd er mwyn sicrhau bod y plant yn dod i'r ysgol, cefnogaeth fel dwedes i iechyd meddwl a hefyd edrych ar gam ymddygiad, bod y gefnogaeth yna yn yr ysgol, bod e ar gael lle mae hynny'n bosibl ar gampws ysgolion uwchradd, fel bod ni yn gallu taclo y problemau neu'r heriau yna i gyd mewn un man. Nawr, mae gyda ni Llywodraeth Cymru ar hyn o bryd be maen nhw'n galw ysgolion cymunedol, ond dyn nhw ddim yn mynd yn ddigon pell o ran rhoi'r gefnogaeth cyfleidiol, another wraparound care that we need for all those services that support absenteeism, mental health issues, ALN, and so on, disruptive behaviour. It's all there supported in secondary schools where that is possible. So that needs collaboration, across sectors as well. Coming to universities, Gareth, but not only the university sector, but the general post-16 sector. I want to look at an earlier sector as well, 14 to 16. That is where we need to invest more in better collaboration, because we've had this silo mentality of schools versus FE versus, or rather universities fit in somewhere in that broader picture. So we have an opportunity through MEDR in post-16 to create a strategy that brings schools and colleges and universities together so that universal provision is there, which includes vocational and the more traditional pathways to further and higher education. But what we need to look at as well is in 14 to 16, the VCSEs are coming on board in 2027, I believe. So we need that greater collaboration to happen earlier. We know absenteeism, disruptive behaviour in schools, a lot of it, and mental health as well, a lot of it has to do with the fact that children are not happy in school. They don't believe that school gives them what they need. So we need to ensure that other options are available, other learning pathways are available, and that means bringing the FE sector in particular together to offer a broader choice of options for 14 to 16-year-olds. But you're absolutely right, universities have a role to play as well in making that contact with young people and raising aspirations. Now, the three things I'd like to finish off with, Sinead, is this. We need an overview of universities in Wales in terms of not only the funding model, but the fundamental question: what are our universities in Wales for? Right? At the moment, they stand as independent bodies. But the old University of Wales stood for something. It stood for improving the economy of Wales. It stood for, preparing young people for the public and private sectors, innovation, research, the entrepreneurs of tomorrow. So we need a better dialogue with universities about what are they giving to the Welsh economy and Welsh public life in general. Secondly, we need to look at a better funding model, which is more sustainable. And we need to look at the Seren scheme as well. The Seren scheme actually encourages our most talented young people to leave Wales. Now, what message does that give to our universities and to our sense of nationhood? That somehow, Welsh universities aren't good enough. If we really want to get on in the world, you need to go to England. Now, where do we hear that? It was with the treason of the Blue Books back in the 19th century, and we still have that same mentality. So we need to change that. I'd like Seren to look at trying to encourage children from poorer households, disadvantaged communities, to go to FE and to go to HE. That's what we need to do. And obviously, Welsh medium provision, part of the, the agenda towards creating 1 million Welsh speakers is a part of that as well. But I could say more, but I'll stop there.
Diolch yn fawr. Mae gyda ni rhyw 10 munud ar ôl. We've got about 10 minutes left. So I'm sure that the panelists would like to respond to some of the things that Kevin said, but maybe also that will come out in the questions. But I think before I open it to the floor, I will give you each a chance just to respond to the general conversation, if you could do that in a minute or two, and then we'll open it up to questions. So Ellie, would you like to go first?
I think it's really wonderful to hear you acknowledge the fact that for some young people, school is challenging. Mainstream education is not always as accessible and inclusive as we would like, and there does need to be viable alternatives where there is still the chance to have a good education. It's not seen as, you know, sort of a second-rate kind of holding place for people who don't fit in. But I think recognising learner wellbeing is really, really important. We have really excellent data in Wales from the School Health Research Network that shows across quite a wide range of measures of wellbeing that most young people in Wales are less happy than older generations, but also that there's real socio-economic difference there, and that unhappiness also intersects with other types of disadvantage. So, you know, if you are also experiencing racism at school and your family have less resources at home, it can be really, really challenging. And again, you know, I think one of the solutions to that is really empowering the teaching workforce, where you know, there's some really good practice and passion for addressing these issues, but, you know, making sure that they're actually given proper support and being really listened to about the solutions as well. But yeah, I think, you know, and again, the universities and just seeing that as a civic good, as something that should be bringing benefits to everyone, because the passion for learning is there. People really want those opportunities. At the moment, the cost of you know, furthering your education, particularly if you perhaps left education at a younger age and would like to go back, it's really prohibitive. You know, so anything that can be done to enable people to have that joy of learning and for it to be something that you can participate in throughout the life course is fantastic.
Yeah, I didn't talk about funding because you asked for quick solutions, but I think it would be remiss of me not to mention it. Feels a bit like the elephant in the room. Obviously, we need increased investment, but that needs to be sustained if we're going to achieve all of the things that we need to achieve. But I really welcome you talking about a more holistic approach, because one of the things that I didn't touch on, but you really reminded me of that when you were speaking, Kevin, was the how well we talk to and work with other people. So one of the things that's really been cut because of funding is really effective and strong pastoral support in schools, and how schools connect with external agencies and work really well with CAMS and social services to support. So we really, you know, our members tell us that some children are being referred to CAMS and they're waiting for 3 years for an appointment, which, you know, I think one of the key things I'd like to get across really is workload. You know, teachers and school leaders know what they need to do. They know what high quality provision looks like. They're the experts. They need time to focus on children, so we really need to tackle workload to allow them to do that. And I think that it's integral, really, that we work together. Otherwise, we won't achieve that. And I think the wider economic success in Wales is only going to be secured if we support and develop the skills and potential of all young people. And thank you, Diolch.
Yeah, I'll be really quick. I welcome what's just been said. 14 to 16 is a problem unless we deal with it quickly, because it's not covered by MEDWR. So we need to be in the room together. We're not. I'll be upfront. I think the education unions and post-compulsory and compulsory education unions are working collaboratively together, because we put ourselves in the room. We're often not put in the room together. So those solutions are not going to work unless that happens. Anything done to our members, effectively, we need to be in the room for. And we are, you know, we do have a Welsh way of working in a very collaborative way. So as you've heard today, we're offering solutions as well. I should have mentioned as well, we're working really collaboratively with the National Union of Students. That's really exciting, some of the work that we're developing there. Ideally, we'd have branches in all of our colleges, but that's something really exciting. But I'll just mention 2 very quick things. One, we're working on a workload project in Coleg Cymru, with Coleg Cymru, and alongside our sister unions as well. Part of the thing there is pastoral coaches, to look at the ALN student support. But we all raise the same issue. Unless that's sustained, we don't want the same mess up where we come up with a great scheme that's funded for 2 years and it's gone. It's got to be proper roles, because people use it as a stepping stone. Or they get really used to that person and then they leave to a better thing. That should be the better thing, that they want to be a pastoral coach. It doesn't mean this idea you've got to become a teacher. That in itself should be something really exciting to work in. And in terms of the university funding model, totally with you. UCU has got a national campaign in Wales, but also a wider campaign in Northern Ireland, Wales, England and Scotland, working collaboratively together. So we've got rallies set up, because at the moment we know a lot of that money has got to come from a different area. but I will call out to any employers, if they can avoid compulsory redundancies, we will work closely with them. If that doesn't happen, we're going to have a problem in the sector. So if they can give us a breathing space, we can work all these exciting things going forward.
Yeah.
If
I could just quickly respond. The question for the panel was, do we need to revolutionise the education system? We need a radical change because we have some of the worst PISA results in Europe, and they've been going down, decreasingly over many, many years. Worst numeracy literacy rates in not only the UK but across Europe, despite having fantastic teachers. So something is going wrong in the system somewhere. Now, Gareth, in your first contribution, you made a really important point about the parity of esteem. If we are looking for alternative options, be it vocational, apprenticeship pathways, whatever it is, let's get rid of this snobbery that we have around that learning pathway. It should be seen as equally important, equally as challenging, and equally as rewarding as well for the young people. Because what we tend to do is to fit the young people into some kind of ideology and some kind of, strategic plan. We need to look at what the needs of those young people are and tailor, the provision around that. And my final point on it, I know time is going. In terms of university, Plaid Cymru have done some research work with London Economics, looking at tweaking maybe the maintenance grant for those leaving Wales for universities across the border. 40% of those students leave Wales to universities in England mainly. So if we tweaked the support, not that we want to stop them if they want to go, that's not the point that I'm making, but we need to maybe prioritise support for those staying in Wales. That would be something that the universities would welcome as well. Because I was in a secondary school in Caerphilly yesterday as part of the review that the Children, Young People and Education Committee is doing on post-16. And I spoke to about 30 sixth formers and I asked them where do they want to go after school? And all of them said university. Well, nearly everyone did. So I said, where would you like to go? And almost every one of them said universities in England. So, that is so unusual because in Scotland, most stay in Scotland, Northern Ireland, most stay there. So, we need to look at that as how we get more Welsh domiciled students to stay in Wales, because we need the brightest talent to stay here, to build our economy, to improve public services and so on. So we need to revolutionise the way we send those messages to young people about, where they want to go to HE.
Diolch i chi gyd. We haven't got a lot of time left for questions. It's such a wide-ranging discussion, but really valuable, I think. We've got a couple of minutes for questions. Oes gyda unrhyw sylw neu gwestiwn a trio cadw yn gryno os fedrwch chi. A falle os hoffech chi gyfeirio at pwy hoffech chi ateb y cwestiwn.
Yeah, I mean, finance is the elephant in the room. And yesterday, the Cardiff University UCU branch put out publicly 1,400 academic staff still under threat of compulsory redundancy, while the university is setting up a European branch, as it were, while it sits on millions of reserves. Yet they're putting that threat out there, which Welsh students will be looking at that and thinking, why on earth do I want to go to Cardiff?
So question about, perhaps some people didn't hear that on the microphone, we will have for the next question, on the fact that Cardiff University, while looking to make compulsory redundancies, are opening up a branch in Kazakhstan, I believe, is it?
Yes, it is,
Gareth, briefly on that?
I'm happy to speak to you again about this later as well, but very quickly, industrial action is really rare in this sector, so we have balloted our members. We're absolutely appalled by that decision, the way it was announced. We had no idea that was happening. In terms of, I know we're in social partnership, we were supposed to be in partnership, we didn't have that information. The branch have tried everything they can. There's ongoing talks this week. What I've been calling for is breathing space. that they rule out compulsory redundancies and we start again. I don't disagree with anything you've just said. It's appalling. That's the question that people are asking me more than any other. So I reiterate what I said earlier on today. It's important that we have breathing space. It's important the pressure is put on that institution to rule out compulsory redundancies and come back to the table, or we will, as we are, resort to action, which is very, very rare and something we don't often have to do in Wales.
It's flashing red, so one more question.
Somebody in the back.
Hi, Sam Williams from Learning Disability Wales. We believe very strongly in an inclusive education system, but currently in Wales it's not working for pupils with additional learning needs who are more likely to be excluded and more likely to be bullied and have problems in school and less likely to achieve qualifications as their peers. So how do we make the education system in Wales more inclusive rather than trying to fit children with additional learning needs into a system that simply doesn't work from them, and then trying to make children behave in a certain way, and attendance again is a big issue for these children, not because they don't want to learn. It's not, but school is not a good place or safe place for them, and we fear that we're going backwards with this, and families, because of the problems with mainstream, are choosing to put their children then into special schools, whereas we feel that actually what needs to happen is mainstream education needs to change to make sure that it's more inclusive for all children.
Yeah, Sam, I mean, the Welsh Government talk about the social model a lot, but we see that doesn't really exist in many educational settings, and you'll know the Equality and Social Justice Committee that I'm a member of has just looked at the disability employment gap, and we looked specific, which is the worst in Wales, by the way, in the UK. We looked at specifically that 14 to 16 sector as well, about people not being deemed to be suitable or to go on work experience, people with disability and learning disability being left behind, quite literally, when things happen in schools. That aspiration raising, understanding what pathways are open to people, those different pathways. So I think there's a long way, and it's so prescient, isn't it, with what's happening at the moment. We really need to have a focus on this, I believe. Would anyone else just like to comment briefly on that?
I mean, I can definitely say that I think we talk about revolutionising education. A really fundamental change that needs to come is for schools to genuinely respect children's rights and to also uphold the rights of disabled children, particularly to really recognise the social model of disability, and for schools to be places that belong as much to the learners and their families as to policymakers and educators, but somewhere where, we use terms like pupil voice and things, but, for it to be genuinely meaningful, how do you ensure that you're really listening to and taking action on the issues that children and their families are telling you about? How is that possible? Because there are schools that achieve it, and we're actually getting better in primary school, but the real problem is really, in our secondary and sort of comprehensive education, particularly, where lots and lots of young people do just eventually have no choice but to not attend. I'm not saying that we know what all the answers are yet, but by using kind of participatory methods and really respecting children's rights in education, and particularly, I think, really thinking hard about how do we get better at having that social model of disability, that's something that a lot of the teaching workforce would also support, I think.
Absolutely. I'll be really quick. I think one of the things that I would say is that if we go back to that main theme of revolutionising, there are different ways that we can support children with ALN, but many of the local authorities are using systems that are out of date, and they're not supporting. And I go back to access to CAMS, services that are really going to support and that you can work collaboratively within school. It is an issue. And also the transition, of course, from an old system to a new system. It's not identifying as many children with additional learning needs, but they haven't gone away. They're still there. So I think we need to be really honest about that needs sustained investment. I'm going to go back to the funding again. But actually, there are really different ways of doing it, and we have to be brave, but we have to speak to the practitioners who know. We have to speak to the children and the young people as well. about what they need and how they access it to be truly inclusive. Thank you, Sam, for raising
Sorry,
that.
just for that issue continues into further education and higher education as well, and what we talk about accessibility and parity of esteem. So it starts earlier, but this is a problem for all of our sectors. It's a really good question.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Sori oedd dim mwy o amser gyda ni am ddisgyn. Dwi'n meddwl oedd safon y gwybodaeth yn uchel, a dwi'n meddwl bod ni gyd wedi elwa o glywed y gwahanol safbwyntiau sy'n holl bwysig i greu y chwyldro rydyn ni angen gweld ar lle sy'n pobl ifanc a hefyd ar lle sy'n cenedl. Felly, dangoswch eich gwerthfawrogiad i'r panel.